Socks and Underwear for Christmas by J. Wilburn. It's a blank page from here on out, so let me tell you a story. Eric didn't dare call this the worst Christmas ever. He was only 8 and really only remembered the last few. Let's say. All right. Thank you, sir. He didn't recall a Christmas without his siblings, but he imagined that might have been better. Daniela was 5 this year. Scott was 4. And let's say baby Tony wasn't even 1 year old. There was 0 chance of Eric getting any real attention this year. All of that was true as far as he could tell, but the real reason he wouldn't say this was a terrible Christmas was because he would break out in tears if he did. It wasn't even safe to think it, so he pushed those feelings down deep. This was a skill he'd use often in later life. All right. Let's do a new paragraph. He was the biggest boy and wasn't allowed to cry. And wasn't allowed to cry. We'll just leave it at that. He held on as best he could with his nose stinging with the threat. All right, I don't know what stonging means, but stinging, I know what that word means. Stinging with the threat of those tears. Every time they took another picture of Tony the Lump laying in front of the tree, he held back his sadness. As Daniela and Scott. Sorry I'm late, Daniel says, but I was waxing my body for Frank's birthday pics. There you go, man. Why would we want to interrupt that? Especially if it only happens once a year. As Daniela and Scott opened toy after toy, Eric bit down on his sorrow. As he opened fewer gifts than any other kid in the house, he swallowed his jealousy as best he could. Mom must have seen it, at least a bit of it, because she said, "You're bigger than them, so they get more toys. That's all." All right. Who asks for my birthday now? Probably not the one you were hoping for, Frank. I'm sorry. All right. You're bigger than them, so they get more toys. That's all. If that was all it was, Eric would have been fine. But he didn't really get much of anything this year. If you took away the clothes, it was a really sad haul indeed. Let's say the others got their lists cleared, and his was hardly touched. He almost asked if he had been bad this year, but that was dangerous, so he just nodded and pretended to look at something across the room. All right. Then someone remembered the stockings. They usually did the stockings first, but this year everyone forgot. Probably it was the new baby's fault. All right. All sorts of treats and small toys they wouldn't have thought about poured out. Even Tony had a stocking stuffed full, and he was more interested in chewing on his fat little fist. Eric took a deep breath and dug into his stocking. Handful after handful of socks and underwear drew out and piled on the floor around his feet. It was like a cruel joke. Even his brother and sister, the ones not chewing their fists and pooping their pants. All right, hold on, let me add something here. Even his brother and sister, the ones not chewing their fists, the ones not busy chewing their fists and pooping their pants, stopped to look upon this terrible sight. As he got his arm all the way down into the toe of the knitted stocking, the truth dawned on him. That was all he had gotten. The underwear was in different colors. While the socks were striped or covered in odd little pictures. All right, we'll say Eric just stared at the island of socks and underwear burying his feet. He let the wadded stocking fall onto the pile. Daniela whispered something to Scott. They were a pair of conspirators most days of the year. Daniela sounded concerned, though, and Eric had to bite his lip. The parents, let's say their parents responded to the tension. Mom said you needed them. Relax, Dad added. There's plenty of candy in the house. Eric started to turn to leave. He had no idea where he was going, but he needed to be away from all this. Don't leave all of that in the floor, Dad said. Go try some on to be sure they fit. Mom said, if you are going to your room. Eric struggled to gather up all that pitiful underwear. All that pitiful underwear and obnoxious socks. It was quite a struggle. Like say, especially as his eyes glazed over with tears. He had lost his battle against crying. Now he needed to retreat. As he shuffled blindly through the kitchen and over, I want to say, and toward the stairs, he heard his sister laughing. He almost turned to scream at her. This was too much to bear. But then he realized that the others were playing with their toys and had forgotten all about his humiliation. Somehow that was worse. He buried his face in the wad of clean underwear in his arms and ran up the stairs. He managed to muffle the first of his sobs, and then let's say but Mom and Dad were busy taking pictures of Tony's first Christmas. They cooed over the baby's smile as the lump gave a huge wet fart. Okay. Let's say Eric managed to... I'm out. Love you all. Have a great Christmas. Be safe. Don't eat all the cookies. Love you too, Armand. And take care of yourself. Try not to catch any more diseases between now and New Year's at all those key parties. Eric managed to close his door with one elbow before, let's say, without slamming it. Without slamming it. He collapsed Slamming it. He collapsed on his bed, face down in the contents of the worst Christmas stocking ever. He wanted to lock his door to keep his sister out, but he needed to get control of himself first. It was no easy task as he choked on his sadness as it released in a rush. Even if he was the oldest, he still deserved a good Christmas. Why couldn't they see that? That got him going again, and he was sure one of his parents would come up to scold him about being selfish. All right. That got him going again, and he was sure one of his parents would come up to scold him about being selfish. He will say all that stuff about Jesus only getting 3 presents. He hoped it wasn't Dad, because Dad would yell and maybe do worse than that. Today was bad enough already. He sat up and his chest hitched a couple more times. All right. He sat up. Give me up in there. Sat up and his chest hitched a couple more times as the storm tapered off. His sister did not come to bother him, which would normally be quite a miracle. She was mean sometimes, but mostly she followed him around like a puppy, telling him every thought or thing that ever happened to her, even if he had been there to see it. He did his best to pretend to be interested because he liked her most of the time, and Mom always said that she had to to do the same thing for Eric. Daniela was busy playing with all her new toys. That almost got him going again, but he forced it all down again. There was only so much sadness you could let out at a time, he decided. All right. Eric showed his teeth and swept all those pairs of underwear and socks into the floor. He clenched his fists and growled. He wasn't sure who or what he was most angry at. Then he picked everything back up because he'd be in trouble if he didn't. I'll say Eric sighed and prepared to stuff these let's say tear dampened things into the proper drawers. But Mom had told him to try them on. Okay, Duffy, is this story an outlet for your anger at not getting Funko Pops for Christmas? No, I'm having a great Christmas. This story's kind of actually making me sad. I didn't mean to have Eric be so sorrowful, but we're setting up for something here. So let's get to the turnaround in the story here. But Mom had told him to try them on. He'd be in here until New Year's if he tried all of them on. Alright. Besides, it was cold and stripping down to underwear and socks over and over made him cold just thinking about it. Alright, I'll try it on. He growled. Alright, let's lowercase that. Good Lord, I've got to start spelling some things right here. I'm going to spend all day in this one little section. Alright, I'll try it on. He growled. He pulled on a blue pair of underwear over his red pajama pants and started laughing. Then he put on a long pair of pink and brown. Okay, put on a. Then he put on. oh good lord. He put on a long pair of pink and brown striped socks over his socks and the end of his pajama pants. Say the cuffs. The cuffs of his pajama pants. Alright. He laughed some more. Why would they buy him pink socks anyway? That pink and brown pattern reminded him of eating ice cream at his grandma's house, but he couldn't remember why. He pulled on a yellow pair of undershorts, then a black, no, then an orange pair after that. He pulled on more socks to cover the pink ones. After that, he paused. I'll try on all of them. Eric giggled. It started to get tight. His toes tingled, and his belly felt pinched along with other parts, but he managed to put on every single pair of underwear and socks at the same time. He wished he had a mirror in his room, but as he stood up with a great effort, his feet looked like astronaut boots, and his underwear stack made him look like he was wearing one of Tony's full diapers. If he ignored the pinching and the full diaper look, he could almost imagine himself as a superhero. Okay. He lifted his closed fists into the air and declared, "I have the power of all the underwear in the world." That sounded to him more like something a super villain would say. He started to bend over with laughing, but we'll put a comma there. But the tight underwear took his breath, and then the roof, say the ceiling and roof over his room blew away into the sky. He stared in shock. Okay, let me do a new paragraph here that makes more sense. He stared in shock as the pieces of the house broke up as they rose into the blue and presumably all the way into space. Cold wind bit through his pajamas and stole any illusion that this was just in his imagination. I have to fix this, he whispered, even though the wind would have covered over his shouts. Then let's stop doing then. I'm using that a lot. Power coursed up through his body from his numb feet through his bundle of underwear he wore and deep into his bones. It was too much power to contain. So, alright, apparently I am just spelling things randomly here. Alright. And deep into his bones. It was too much power to contain, so he released it in the same cathartic rush he had done with his tears and sadness. Alright. I misspelled cathartic. Alright. Eric launched into the air and soared away over the neighborhood and the town below. He saw the highways and even his school from this height. He laughed again, even as the cold air brought tears heavy into his eyes that had nothing to do with being sad. If I'm going to keep doing this, I'll need a mask and a cool name. Maybe I'll need a sidekick too, just like the other. Alright, now we'll do M dash. He was struck hard from the side and tumbled through the high winds out of control. He had no point of reference for this type of impact or pain. Older men would have said they'd been hit by a truck or a plane. Eric thought at first he had flown too high, and no, not plane, train. Come on now. A truck or a train. Eric thought at first he had flown too high and was struck by the nose of a passenger jet. What if he had knocked the plane out of the sky as well? All those people, their families. Eric got his descent under control and turned in the air to see if whatever hit him was falling too. He only just caught a blur of motion. Okay, let me make that a new paragraph too. That one sentence will be its own paragraph. All right. He only just caught a blur of motion before it hit him again in the center of his chest. All right. Eric fought to get free as they plummeted to the ground, but the other figure, an adult wearing a mask and a green uniform with a cape, held on. They struck a grassy field together and tore a deep trench through the ground that uprooted a fence on the far side of the field before they came to a stop. Who are you? Eric choked, still shocked to be alive. The adult in the green uniform picked Eric up and slammed him down on the ground again. The brown grass was still thick, but the earth underneath was frozen, and it felt like bouncing off concrete. I'm your nemesis, you little jerk. These skies are mine, and you will suffer. Eric already felt like he was suffering. He was only 8, and this was quite violent. Not to mention, he had only just learned how to fly. He gave a little squeak of pain as he tried to catch his breath, where he twisted on the frozen grass. Are you gonna cry? You look like you want to cry. Did mommy not love you enough to give you anything good for... Eric punched at the man's legs and green boots. The man just tilted his head back as he laughed. They were just 8-year-old punches. He lifted his boot, and Eric only just rolled out of the way before the nemesis stomped a crater. Okay, let's see if we can spell stomped correctly. Before the nemesis stomped a crater into the ground where Eric had been laying down. Lying down? Maybe that's right. Lying down. Alright, rolling right along here. The man rushed forward and kicked again before Eric could move aside. He punted the boy across the field where Eric bounced to a stop. All right, Eric struggled to his feet and gasped for breath as the nemesis took his time walking toward him. The guy was saying something, but was too far away for Eric to hear. He tried to summon all his strength and launched himself into the air again. As the nemesis took flight, Eric turned suddenly and rocketed into his chest, blasting the man several feet down into the dirt. There was an extended silence before globs of red clay and bits of frost ejected from the soil. All right. The nemesis did not fly out the way Eric expected. The man's uniform was torn, and blood leaked from one ear as he tried to climb from the hole. Eric stepped forward and started stomping on his head. On the guy's head. The man gargled and spit as he tried to speak through the onslaught, but succeeded in making no real words. Eric screamed as he pounded the guy into the ground. Are you going to cry? Are you sad now? When he stopped, the nemesis lay very still. Eric looked around to be sure no one was looking. Kedman, hey Jay, tomorrow is the last day I work for this year. Good job, man. Hope you enjoy your time off. When he stopped, the nemesis lay very still. Eric looked around to be sure no one was looking. No one was watching. We don't want two looks in there. No one was watching. His first thought was to fly far away. His second was to hide what he had done. Eric flew around the field, gathering big armloads of dirt and covered the hole with the nemesis in it. As he was about to take flight again, a roar filled the world. Eric first looked... Alright, I need to fix that spelling. Eric first looked down at the disturbed earth of what might have been a grave. Alright, world. Yeah, I see that. I'm going to have a lot of things like that in a first draft. Alright. Alright, Eric first looked down at the disturbed earth of what might have been a grave. Then no, I don't want to keep using then. He looked to the sky and saw the creatures in flight. There were 3 of them. Dragons, Eric whispered. I hate dragons. He launched into the air and met the beasts in the sky. They doused him with fire from 3 directions. They doused him with fire from 3 directions, but his underwear and socks were thick enough to protect him. Alright, soon done with the first book in the Poppy War series. Pretty cool book. That sounds great, man. Alright. He flew around the creatures, being careful to avoid their spiky tails. They breathed fire on each other, and soon the dragons fought among themselves. Let's say Eric laughed as they flew away, destroying each other instead of him. He clapped his hands together. And said, Another job well done. Next is super hearing. Picked up the scared meows. Let's say super hearing. We'll put a dash in there, why don't we? Picked up the scared meows of a cat. He followed the sound and found a little kitten up a tree. This was old school superhero work. Eric reached out his hands as he floated near the top of the tree. Come on, little buddy. I'll help you. Ouch. The kitten clawed him, and Eric pulled away. The small cat climbed down the tree all on its own. Fine. Have it your way. I was only trying to help. Merry Christmas. Then his super hearing picked up his dad's footsteps on the stairs. At their house across town. Eric raced back, flying low to the ground and dodging power lines. He landed on the floor of his bedroom as his dad crossed the hallway. The cold wind still blew. All right, the cold wind still blew. His room was missing the ceiling and roof, along with parts of his walls. His dad would not be happy. Eric reached out his hands and reached out his hands and closed his eyes. He whispered, "By the power of my underwear and socks, bring the house back together." From space, all the pieces of his house re-entered the atmosphere. Somehow they did not burn up as they formed back together over him. He opened... Okay, I'm going to need to do a new paragraph here. All right, let me say what I got real quick. He opened his eyes with his arms still spread. The ceiling was in place. He couldn't see what the roof looked like from the outside. He hoped for the best. There were more cracks in the ceiling than before, and sprinkles of white dust fell in a couple spots on the carpet as his father opened the unlocked bedroom door. Time for lunch, kiddo. Let's say Dad stared for a moment, and Eric finally dropped his arms to his sides. Okay. He started to walk for the door, toward the door, but his dad didn't move out of the way. Eric looked up. Into his father's face, expecting to get in trouble. A hint of a smile pulled at the corners of the man's mouth. And then Dad fought that off the way Eric fought his tears. What are you wearing? Eric looked down at the spaceman boots, socks, and the full diaper look of all that underwear. Everything. I'm wearing all of that. All of it. Dad sighed and turned away. You look ridiculous. Get all that off and come down to lunch. Eric got started. It was going to take a while to get it all off. A piece of ceiling fell and hit him in the back of his head. Eric brushed the debris aside and went on with removing all those socks. All right.